Pastor had a Bible study he needed to go to, so you're stuck with me today. So,
That's a good thing.
oh, well, good. I'm glad somebody thinks so. Yeah, appreciate that. Well, we're going to go ahead and have prayer, and then we're going to get started on talking about GMO. And if you have questions about anything at all, then hold them to the end if you would, and we'll have time for question and answers. Let's bow our heads and ask God's blessing. Gracious Father, we thank you so very much for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity of worshiping you, the Creator of heaven and earth. As we talk about man and how man is destroying your creation and how he's destroying the food chain, I ask that you would please bless us and help us to know exactly what we should do in order to maintain our health. Thank you, dear Lord, in the precious name of our dear Savior, Jesus. Amen. I'm going to make a few remarks, and then I'm going to show you a video which is about 20 minutes long, maybe a little bit longer. And I made some notes so I wouldn't forget. And one of the things that genetically modified organisms does, it creates a condition of where it destroys the immune system. Now, how do we know that? In America, there's not been a lot of testing done here on it purposely. We don't know, well, they have tested, for an example, they tested GMO tomatoes, and they fed them to rats, and about half of the rats died within 2 weeks of eating the tomatoes. They approved the seed. So we don't know. Later on, there were so many problems with the tomato that they've now put it on hold. They're not, as to my knowledge, the tomatoes are not GMO at this point. Now, there is a lot of information coming out of India. Monsanto went in early on, probably in the late 1990s, to India and convinced many of the cotton farmers, pardon me, that banana still bothers me. Nah, just kidding. But nevertheless, they convinced the cotton farmers in India to buy the GMO seeds. And so they promised them that they would have more cotton, bigger yields, they would make more money. So they fell into a trap in that they bought the seeds, and then they found that it required more water. And you keep in mind, most of the irrigation system is by hand over there. That's a lot of water that they have to by hand do. Well, the crops came along, and they did not produce more cotton. In fact, they produced a little bit less. Well, the Indians, like they have done for centuries, they would take the cotton, and I grew up on the farm in Central Valley, and we grew cotton there, and cotton is full of seeds. And they would pull out the seeds and use it the next year to plant. Well, when they did that, nothing would grow, wouldn't grow. So they had to buy more seeds from Monsanto. Now, one village, what their tradition was, is after they had picked the cotton, they would let the cattle go out and eat the cotton plants, to graze on them. They'd done that for decades, centuries probably. And when they did that, the cows died within about 2 days. To date, there are about 225 to 250,000 farmers, believe it or not, that's a lot, that have committed suicide. Because they own their land by generation to generation. And they went out to borrow money from the banks, which they'd never had to do before, to buy the seeds that ruined them. And as a result of that, to save face in their religious belief, they committed suicide. So it's a major problem. What's it doing to humans? And we're going to talk a little bit about it. I made a little list here. First of all, gastrointestinal systems. We know this works this way, that in our gastrointestinal part of our body, we have, as you know, friendly bacteria. And when that friendly bacteria is killed off by antibiotics, it leaves a void. Well, most of us have had that experience. So what they found that when they modify foods, they actually cause the foods to take on bacteria, and they cause them to take on sometimes genes from other animals. And when it came to the genetically modified corn that Monsanto produced, that corn would produce pesticides, automatically produce pesticides in the corn. So you get beautiful ears of corn because if the bugs start to eat it, they die. Well, guess what happens? Those same kind of bugs get into your intestinal tract, and it constantly makes pesticides. And so it is creating major health problems. So with that in mind, let's just move on. It also accelerates aging. We age faster when we eat the GMO corn. Maybe that would be a plug for the product B we talked about last time. But anyway, vital organs are damaged. We know that happens from animal studies, and also they suspected if it does this to animals, why not humans as well? And people are becoming ill faster at younger rates, as we talked about this morning. Infertility. Infertility is a byproduct of this. You're going to see that in the video I'm going to show you in a few minutes. You'll find that farmers in the Midwest that you have been using GMO corn to feed their pigs and their hogs, the hogs would deliver bags of water. And so they had to make a change in the food. Some of the farmers no longer use GMO foods because it was destroying their business and their farm. There was OBGYN physician said that one of the major problems they're facing today is young people who cannot become pregnant, who cannot have children. And they want to have children, and a lot of it has to do with the GMO foods. And increases infant mortality in animals. More of the animals die at younger ages. So it is definitely a problem. They have found hogs and other animals that have birth defects as a result of it, and some of them are growing hair in their mouth, believe it or not. It's destroyed, or it's distorting the DNA information that we have in each of our cells. Signs of toxicity. It is showing signs of toxicity in these animals, and I don't know about you, but I'd rather not eat something that's going to make me look older than I already am. And there's such things as irritable bowel syndrome, chronic fatigue, and others that come about as a result. I wrote down a couple of quotes. One is the American Academy of Environmental Medicine recommends doctors to prescribe only non-GMO foods. Well, that's getting harder because more and more GMO foods are on the market today. They are also teaching doctors to educate all patients on health and to teach the patients to look for GMO products. As I mentioned this morning, 70% of your processed foods have GMO ingredients. A few years back, I liked a product called Boca Burgers. Anybody ever eat Boca Burgers?
Yeah.
Because they tasted really good. I called and I asked, I said, what kind of soy are you using in your product? And then they told me, and I said, is it GMO? And they said, yes, it is. So I don't know, they may have changed because I told people, call them and tell them they lost customers. And if you hit them with their pocketbook, they'll make the changes. So I don't know, maybe they're not doing it anymore, but it's been a couple of 2 or 3 years ago that I called them. We find that it is causing irritable bowel syndrome, as I mentioned, but also weight gain. The GMO foods cause weight gain. Farmers like it for animals if the animals survive and if the animals are able to reproduce as they should. Colitis, diverticulitis, and colon problems in which people have can come from genetically modified foods. Remember, it attacks the gastrointestinal area of your body. Restless leg syndrome. I get calls on that once in a great while. And restless leg syndrome, a natural remedy for that, believe it or not, is is Himalayan salt. A pinch of Himalayan salt before bedtime will keep your legs from getting nervous if you have that condition. But if the cause of it, we need to go through, find the cause, and then remove the cause in order to get rid of it permanently out of our system. And one of the reasons is genetically modified foods. Then we find symptoms will go away if we get off of those foods. So it's very, very imperative that you know what you're eating. With that in mind, I'd like to go ahead and have you see this particular little video. It's from start to finish. It's about 25 minutes, and I'll probably cut it off before it gets there.
With decades and decades of well-documented lying to the American public.
Those who complained were fired, stripped of responsibilities, and forced out.
As we started feeding the GMO corns to our animals, we started experiencing huge reproductive problems.
Rats that were fed genetically modified tomato developed stomach lesions, bleeding stomachs. 7 out of 40 died within 2 weeks, and the tomato was approved.
What did the FDA administrators do? They had ignored, overridden their own side of statements.
Tragically, children are most at risk from the potential dangers of genetically engineered foods.
The biotech industry claims that genetically engineered foods are safe, but scientists and investigators around the world disagree. New evidence suggests that industry pressure and political collusion force these foods onto the market, and their effects on health, particularly on kids, may be serious.
To create a genetically engineered food, you take a gene from one species and you put the gene into the DNA of another species. Now, typically they do this because they want to add a trait. Like they take, for example, a gene that creates a pesticide and they put it into corn so that the corn will create a pesticide. The process of genetic engineering can disrupt the normal functioning of the DNA in dramatic ways. It can turn genes off, permanently turn them on, change their levels of expression, and create all sorts of unpredicted production of allergies, toxins, carcinogens, nutrient problems, etc.
When we got the FDA's documents and began to analyze them, we found something very shocking. That not only did the scientists who had joined our lawsuit have concern about genetically engineered foods, not only did hundreds of other scientists around the world have concern about the potential hazards of genetically engineered foods, but the FDA's own scientific staff had the same concerns. The overwhelming consensus within the FDA's own scientific staff was genetic engineering is inherently hazardous, it is very different than conventional breeding, and every food that is modified through it, every food that's been genetically engineered, has to be carefully safety tested because it runs the risk of harboring unintended harmful substances such as new poisons, new allergens.
But their superiors were under orders from the White House to promote the biotechnology industry.
They were only told we need to have this technology moving and moving fast, and we need to have a whole new industrial sector in place.
And the person in charge of policy was a former attorney for the large biotech company Monsanto.
What did the FDA administrators do? They had ignored, overridden their own side of statements and presumed that all of these foods are safe.
No long-term safety studies, no safety studies whatsoever are required before foods are put on the market.
And that's like saying you make a car and the producer of the car doesn't test it. We'll let some people, get killed driving the car to see if it is safe or not. It's an absurd position, but that is the position of a lot of the people who are promoting this technology.
People were saying in the industry and the regulatory agencies that if the American people want progress, they're going to have to be the guinea pigs.
Now, there are so many loopholes and flaws in the current regulatory regime for assessing the safety of genetically engineered food that I consider this framework to be little more than a regulatory facade which enables food producers to claim that their products have been properly tested and to help persuade consumers that genetically engineered foods are safe.
They wanted to get something through that gave at least the illusion that this was being tested.
Rats that were fed genetically modified tomato developed stomach lesions, bleeding stomachs. 7 out of 40 died within 2 weeks, and the tomato was approved. Rats fed genetically modified soy had misshapen nuclei in their liver cells. Rats fed genetically modified canola had livers that were heavier. Rats that were fed genetically modified corn had problems in the development of their blood cells. Chicken fed genetically modified corn died at twice the rate of those fed non-genetically modified corn. 12 cows died mysteriously in Germany when being fed genetically modified corn. And several Midwestern farmers report that when they feed genetically modified corn to their pigs, the pigs have reproductive problems.
The mother hogs were going into their full pregnancies, and instead of a normal litter of babies they would deliver bags of water, or they wouldn't do anything. As we worked our way through this, we found, through word of mouth and media coverage, another 25 farmers in 5 states that had exactly the same problems.
Our whole problem was the fact that we were not getting sows pregnant. It wasn't just us, but there was a lot of people in the area that had the same problem. So we figured out that everybody was feeding the same seed corn.
We've had trouble with conception rates. We did testing, did everything, nothing worked. We're finding out it's traced clear back to the seed corn. It makes you wonder with the genetic modified stuff what we're finding out now with it, and we're just touching the tip of the iceberg, I think.
I had one gentleman in Nebraska. He was feeding the BT corn to the sows, and he had trouble with the conception of that group of sows. He switched away from using that BT corn, and the problem went away.
If thalidomide had not caused dramatic birth defects, but rather cancer or other allergenic responses, it would still in all probability be in supply because of the difficulty of linking cause and effect.
If there were reproductive problems that were caused by genetically modified foods, or problems in liver cell development, or bleeding stomachs, who would know that it was genetically modified foods? No one is monitoring. An example of how difficult it is to discover the cause of a problem came in the 1980s. There was an epidemic. About 100 people died and 5,000 to 10,000 people fell sick. They finally traced it back to a food supplement that had been created from the process of genetic modification. Only the brand that was genetically modified caused this disease. Now, the only reason that they were able to discover that it was an epidemic was that the disease had 3 simultaneous characteristics. It was rare, it was acute, and it came on quickly. If any one of these 3 characteristics had not been in place, that same deadly food supplement might still be on the market.
I think that the main problem is likely to be this long-term effect of GM. I think that the simplest analogy is smoking. How long did it take for smoking, the effects of smoking to be uncovered? 30, 40 years?
Look it over like in Vietnam where they sprayed Agent Orange. Didn't think that was going to hurt. Well, could be the same thing with genetically modified products too.
We know that soon after genetically modified soy was introduced into the UK, soy allergies skyrocketed there by 50%. Now, we can't say that it was definitely the genetic modification of the soy, but we do know that soy has an increase in trypsin inhibitor, the most commonly known soy allergen. But we also know that you can transfer allergens into genetically modified foods. In fact, the process of genetically engineering soy disrupted the DNA and caused a damaged section, which could, in theory, create an allergenic protein. Also, the gene which they inserted into the soy rearranged over time without explanation. So it's creating actually a slightly different protein, one that was never tested or predicted or intended to be produced inside the soy, and that might be allergenic or toxic. So there's a lot of reasons why a genetic modified food could create an increase in allergies. In the UK, they took a genetically modified potato and they fed it to rats. And the rats ended up with potentially precancerous cell growth in their digestive tract, smaller brains, livers, and testicles due to retarded development of the organs, partial atrophy of the liver, and a damaged immune system. And it remains the most in-depth animal feeding study ever published on the safety of genetically engineered foods. And it shows that these foods might inherently be unsafe. Dr. Arpad Pustai, before the study was completed, was invited to speak on television. And he expressed his concerns about genetically engineered foods and how the public is being used as guinea pigs in an uncontrolled experiment. When news of his research came out, he was a hero for 2 days at his prestigious institute. But then on a Tuesday evening, 2 phone calls were allegedly placed from the Prime Minister's office, forwarded through the receptionist to the institute's director. The next morning, Wednesday morning, Arpad Pustai was fired after 35 years and silenced with threats of a lawsuit.
Personally, I've been contacted by telephone and email by a number of scientists who have serious concerns about aspects of the research that is taking place in various institutions in New Zealand and the increasingly close ties that are developing between science and commerce, but who are convinced that if they express these fears publicly, or even if they ask the awkward and difficult questions, they will be eased out of their institution.
Because of my involvement in the genetic engineering debate, I became very unpopular with the genetic engineers in my department. So I was, let's put it mildly, very strongly encouraged to retire early. Okay, I mean, I was basically hounded out of the department and the university that I had taught in for nearly 25 years.
And a UC Berkeley professor claims that he was being threatened by a senior Mexican government official who tried to get him not to publish incriminating evidence.
He pressured me in a pretty nasty way, threatened and did everything he could to try and convince me that I shouldn't publish.
The vast majority of the academic plant science is funded directly or indirectly from industry, and so that is one of the reasons that, at least I believe, that the academic plant biologists are somewhat hesitant about speaking, taking issue with some of the plant biotechnology food issues.
This fear among scientists and the control by the biotech industry has meant that there has not been a lot of follow-up to evidence suggesting that genetically modified foods are unsafe, even inside governments. For example, in the Food and Drug Administration, they were approving the very first genetically modified drug. It was a drug injected into cows to increase milk supply. It's called recombinant bovine growth hormone, or RBGH. Scientists complain that this might be unhealthy for humans eating the dairy products and drinking the milk. But those who complained were fired, stripped of responsibilities, or forced out. The remaining whistleblowers had to write an anonymous letter to Congress claiming that there was fraud and conflict of interest in the department. Scientists have been concerned that genes might jump from the genetically modified food to gut bacteria. The biotech industry had claimed that the genes were destroyed during digestion and that no transfer was possible. The only human feeding study, however, contradicted that. It showed that genes that had been inserted into soy actually jumped from the soy and now took up residence inside the DNA of the gut bacteria inside the human beings. So even if we stop eating genetically modified soy, it's possible that the protein that it's engineered to create will continue to be produced inside of us. Organizations like the American Medical Association, the World Health Organization, and others were concerned that the antibiotic-resistant marker genes, which are inserted into genetically modified foods, might jump to our gut bacteria, and that could create new diseases that would be resistant to antibiotics. Also, when you genetically modify something, you have to put in a promoter, something to turn on that foreign gene so it operates 24/7 around the clock. But it turns out that this promoter can turn on other genes at random up and down the DNA. So inside the corn or soy, it might turn on other genes which could be allergenic or toxic or carcinogenic or anti-nutritional. But we now know that that promoter also transfers to gut bacteria. In addition, preliminary evidence showed that the promoter transferred to the organs, the internal organs of rats, after a single meal. Now, earlier we talked about corn that was genetically engineered to produce its own pesticide. Imagine the gene that produces the pesticide transferring to gut bacteria. Now you have a gene inside the DNA, inside our intestines, producing pesticide. It converts our bacteria into living pesticide factories. Tragically, children are most at risk from the potential dangers of genetically engineered foods. They have young, developing bodies, so they're going to be more at risk from possible toxins or nutritional problems. Children are more susceptible to allergies, 3 to 4 times more susceptible than adults, especially children below 2 years old. Also, children drink a lot of milk. Now, the cows injected with genetically engineered bovine growth hormone produce milk with an increased level of a hormone called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. Those with high levels of IGF-1 in their systems are much more likely to develop breast cancer and prostate cancer. Also, a lot of children have to take antibiotics because of ear infections and other problems. If there are antibiotic-resistant super diseases, that's going to have a tremendous impact on children.
American companies who release these genetically modified foodstuffs have never done proper risk assessment on them. Monsanto said that their genetically modified soya is safe. Then the FDA regarded that as evidence for its safety.
What concerns me is that the health risks of genetically modified organisms in agriculture are only assessed through relatively rudimentary biochemical analysis and short-term feeding trials of animals. And these are totally inadequate.
They feed these animals for only about 4 weeks. Sometimes, on one occasion, I think it was 6 weeks. You can't do cancer experiments in that time. And certainly they were not fed to animals and pregnant animals to see what happened to the offspring. And certainly biochemistry, immunology, tissue pathology, gut function, liver function and kidney function do not seem to be done.
Personally, I have a hard time trusting the 5 or 6 companies in the biotechnology industry which now control our seed supply. I have a hard time trusting them because they are essentially the same companies that brought us pesticides, that told us that pesticides were harmless, that pretended to show spokespeople eating them on television by the spoonful. Of course, it turned out later what they were eating was powdered milk because they weren't stupid enough to actually eat DDT. But these are companies with decades and decades of well-documented lying to the American public.
Many scientists say that industry research is rigged to avoid finding problems.
We need to have good independent safety testing of genetically engineered foods. In other words, safety testing that is not done by the applicant company.
I would recommend that perhaps we could set up human clinical trials using volunteers or genetically engineered scientists and their families, because I think they are so convinced of the safety of the products that they are creating that I'm sure they would very readily volunteer to become part of a human clinical trial.
A lot of information today shows that food influences mood and behavior. For example, a study on 3-year-olds showed that 25% of tantrums in the study were due to food coloring and additives added to the juice they were drinking. Also, changes in diet of prisoners and probationers dramatically changed their behavior. A Dutch student took 2 groups of mice. One he fed genetically modified food, the other non-genetically modified food. Those on the natural food played with each other and acted like mice. Those with the genetically modified food stopped playing with each other, sort of retired in their corners and were very non-social. Also, they were very much more scared of him when he went into the cages to pick them up to weigh them, and one was inexplicably found dead at the end of the experiment. Now, does this mean that genetically modified foods will affect behavior of animals or humans? It would certainly be irresponsible to say so based on a single experiment. But by the same token, it would be irresponsible to say that it doesn't, because no studies have actually been done to verify whether in fact there's an influence on behavior. There's a school in Appleton, Wisconsin that changed its diet from the normal daily school meals that kids eat all over the country to wholesome, delicious, and nutritious food, and the change was amazing. They weren't intending to, but when they removed processed foods from the school meals, they removed almost all sources of genetically engineered products. I mention this school in my book, Seeds of Deception, because after about 7 chapters of telling the reader about the dangers of genetically engineered foods and all the rat studies and human problems, I figured someone would still possibly have the excuse, well, I'm going to die anyway. I like sharing the clips of the Appleton documentary as added inspiration for people to change their diet.
The Appleton Area School District in Wisconsin is taking a community-wide approach to school nutrition.
In January of 1997, I visited Central High School as a prospective employee and observed the students that were housed here at the time and found them to be rude, obnoxious, very crude, and ill-mannered.
I was
brought over to the school because the school was out of control. They were having a lot of problems with rebellious students, weapons violation, things of that nature. So they wanted a cop on school premise at all times.
We started the food program approximately 3.5 years ago. One Friday, the kids were here. They had candy machines and pop machines in the student lounge. The following Monday, they came to school and they were greeted by water coolers and healthy bagels and energy drink for breakfast.
Since we started the program, the Nutrition, the Natural Ovens program, with the complete diet, the balanced diet, I have seen a total change in the students and the environment within the school. It's amazing.
Now that I actually have a job here, I was hesitant once again to start and found that the atmosphere is entirely different. The students are calm, they're well behaved. I don't have to deal with the daily discipline issues, out and out disciplining of students. That just isn't an issue here.
Every year we are required to file a state report. On the state report, they include information regarding the number of dropouts, expulsions, drugs, weapons, suicides. Since we've started this program, zeros is what I have had to report. It's a pretty nice report to fill out.
Our biggest problems right now at this school are parking in the parking lot and student tardiness. I don't have the disruptions in class or the difficulties with student behavior that perhaps I experienced 4 years ago before we started the food program.
Now that I concentrate, I think it is easier to get along with people. Because now I'm paying attention to what they have to say and just not worrying about what I need to say to them.
Healthy food has had more of an impact than we thought. We believed that it would help settle the kids down, which it has done, but I think we were surprised the impact it's had on academic learning.
Personally, I think I've been able to demand more academically from my students over the last few years.
I notice in conference time, a lot of parents will say, you know, that nutrition unit is really making a difference.
This is the first generation in history that might not outlive their parents because of health and lifestyle issues, nutrition and fitness.
I can't buy the argument that it's too costly for schools to provide good nutrition for their students. I found that one cost will reduce another. I don't have the vandalism. I don't have the litter. I don't have the need for high security.
We've cut $5 million out of our operational budget in the last 2 years. We did 35 focus groups in the community, and not one person brought up the issue of you should get back into junk-type foods because they see that healthy lifestyles is important. I believe in 3 or 4 years every school in the country will be into a nutrition program because the more schools that are going in that direction, they're seeing it does make a difference.
We've got to stop using our most precious commodity, our kids, to make extra money.
Schools throughout the UK have banned GM foods a long time ago, as have schools in selected cities from around Europe. In Italy, in fact, schools are required to serve organic foods, as they are in Berkeley and Palo Alto, California. And around the United States, more and more schools are removing junk food. They're removing the sodas, they're removing the candies. It's time that we extend that ban to include genetic modification. There are 4 major genetically modified crops: soy, corn, cotton, which is used in cottonseed oil, and canola. Actually, all 4 are used in vegetable oil. Now, soy and corn have a lot of offspring, derivatives that are found in many of the processed foods that we eat. So it's to avoid genetically modified foods, it's often easy to avoid processed foods, and you can avoid the 2 at the same time. Now, there's also Hawaiian papaya, and a little bit of zucchini and crookneck squash, and Quest tobacco. And that's the only genetically modified crops that are currently commercialized. The tomato was taken off the market, the potato was taken off the market, and several other varieties have been approved but not introduced commercially. Milk from cows treated with genetically modified bovine growth hormone are also considered genetically modified, and there are also enzymes and additives that are created from genetically modified bacteria or fungus. Now, typically, they're not labeled. Aspartame, which is a sweetener, is one exception.
The same companies that produce GMO-laden processed food in the U.S. market produce GMO-free products in the European market. We have a lot of power as consumers. We have to exercise it. We should be asking everywhere that we buy food if their products contain genetically engineered ingredients, and insist that we will only buy products from them that are demonstrably free of GMOs.
So we have to get the word out and educate people to describe how these foods may be impacting ourselves and our children, so we can make those choices and move the market.
Studies show that the majority of people do not want GM foods. Interestingly, the studies also show that the more educated people are, the less likely they are to feel comfortable about it and support it. And the more knowledge people have about it, the less they like it.
Eyewitness reports from all over North America describe how several types of animals, when given a choice, avoid eating genetically modified foods.
The cows didn't care for it. We put BT corn and conventional corn in the feed bunk, and they cleaned up the conventional corn and left the BT corn. They did not eat it. In South Dakota, where they leave food plots stand for the wildlife, that the deer won't eat Roundup Ready corn.
Our knowledge of genetics is still far too rudimentary, and genetic engineering technology far too crude for the release of genetically modified organisms into the environment and their entry into the food chain to be justified. This is particularly important when one bears in mind that genetically modified organisms, once released, are uncontainable and unrecallable if problems happen to arise.
These might be the basis for real, and we shouldn't use, scientists are not supposed to use strong words, but these might be the basis for real ecological and health catastrophes. That's a fact.
People who boost genetic engineering are going to have to do a mea culpa and come clean and ask for forgiveness like the Pope did on the Inquisition. You know, we made a mistake, and let's start over.
I'd just like to speak as a father. I think that we have to think of the next generation, and I would hate for us now to make decisions that prohibit them from making their own decisions later on. I wouldn't like to sell my children's future for a handful of magic beans.
We're part of this huge uncontrolled experiment. Millions of people are being fed GM foods every day without knowing the impacts on health, behavior, or our children. These foods could be eroding the health of the people of the planet, and the impacts on children could be far worse. With the rise in obesity and diabetes, with the dramatic results in Appleton, with the growing body of research that suggests that GM foods are not safe and should never have been approved, a complete overhaul of our diet and school meal programs is long overdue.
Join communities all over who are organizing to remove genetically engineered foods from school meals. To find out more, go to gmfreeschools.org or call the GM Free School.
Today, you know, there's a movement worldwide to reduce world population. And what better way than to make it look natural, to be able to cause infertility in young people where they can't reproduce. And we know it does that in animals, and we're quite sure it does it in humans as well. So it is one of the things that I'm just going to repeat a couple things they said. One of the ways to be able to help this dilemma which we have in America, before, I just want to back up a little bit. Most European countries will not accept GMO foods. Most countries of the world will not eat GMO foods. There was a story that came out a few years ago about a whole shipload of corn that was to be unloaded in an African nation who needed the food, and they refused to let it be unloaded. They wouldn't take it. And so these people are probably smarter than we are. They're not eating that kind of food. Now, the way to help this situation is to hit them in the pocketbook. But they have to know it. So foods that might have GMO ingredients in it we need to stay away from. Now, how do we find that out? Well, favorite foods usually have a customer service telephone number on the package. And they're usually a toll-free number. Call and ask. And if they tell you, well, yes, this ingredient, the corn, soy, whatever it may be, is GMO, tell them you just lost a customer. And boycott them. And they say if you could actually bring their sales down by 5%, that's enough to get them to change. So one person can make a difference. So that's what I would recommend with this. Find out what you're eating. Know whether it is good food or indifferent food. Now, I gave this last time, I want to give it again. In the produce department of your grocery stores, they have a code on every produce that's there, tomatoes, bananas, whatever it may be. If it is a 4-digit code, it is hybrid. It's not genetically modified. If it is a 5-digit code starting with an 8, it is definitely GMO. If it is a 5-digit code starting with a 9, it is organic. And you can tell that by looking, and a lot of stores will have both organic and non-organic bananas. And you just look at the codes on it. You'll see that the bananas that we've been getting for the last 60, 70 years have a 4-digit code. But the organic will have a 5-digit code starting with a 9. So that's one way you can tell as far as produce is concerned. But how about the packaged foods? We're almost going to have to call and ask. Keep in mind, 70% of processed foods have GMO ingredients in it. And you can see what happened back in what was at Wisconsin when they brought in good, nutritious food for the kids. It made all the difference in the world. And how many of our schools today have discipline problems? A lot of it has to do with the food. And I think I told this story last time, but I'll repeat it this time, and then we'll open up for question, is that there was a psychiatrist in the state of Washington who went to the Department of Corrections and got permission to go into a maximum security prison. And he asked for volunteers of the prisoners. And he tested them. And I don't know how you test for this, but he knew how. And they tested, and they found that many of the most violent men in the prison had 6,000 times more omega-6 than omega-3. Remember, back in the 1930s, it was 1-in-1 ratio. Today, it can be 1-in-45, even 1-in-60 ratio. That was tremendous ratio. He put them on a good oil, only flaxseed oil. And within time, those violent men calmed down and became more model citizens of the prison itself. So nutrition makes a big difference. If you have a lot of anger or bitterness in your life, then maybe it could be aggravated more by diet. So we need to eat the right foods because we are the children of God. This is God's remnant church. And as being His remnant church, we need to have not only a physical healthiness, but a mental and spiritual healthiness too. When we treat the man, we treat the whole man. That's how we're to do, is to treat the whole man. We're to treat the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, and the problems that we have physically could be spiritually, or could even be mental. So it's definitely a problem that we have. But check out the GMO foods. Check it out and make sure that these foods are not causing health problems. And if you have a gastrointestinal problem at all, it could be from that. That's where it starts, but it goes from there. Any questions that anybody has? Yes, sir. You have to speak up because I'm a little hard of hearing. I'm sorry? Oh, hybrid. The hybrid would be, it's modified, The food is modified, the seeds are modified, but they're not using outside organisms in order to come up with the genetically modified food. They have done through crossbreeding and things like that. That's right. And so it's not as bad. But we still lose food value no matter what foods we eat. Today, part of the problem that we have is the soil depletion. We have lost about 75% of America's topsoil since the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth Rock back centuries back. And so it is a major problem in which we have. So, yeah. Oh. Okay. All right. There's a couple of them.
What is IGF? What does IGF stand for?
What does what now?
IGF.
IEF?
IGF-1.
Oh, that's something they mentioned on the tape, and I don't know exactly what that is. But that is basically a pesticide that's in the corn that they have developed through genetically modifying. That's one of the things Monsanto tells the farmer. You don't have to put pesticides, only put Roundup on to kill the grass and the weeds, because we have modified it to the point to where it will kill the bugs if they start to eat the corn. Now I've looked at genetically modified ears of corn, and I have found them to look perfect. So they're very inviting for people to eat. This gentleman over here, I think, had his hand up first. And then you. Do you have a microphone? Wait just a second. Okay.
5-digit code that starts with an 8, is that the hybrid?
No. 5-digit code starting with an 8 would be genetically modified. And then starting with a 9, 5-digit code would be organic. And then the 4-digit code would be your what we've had for the last 60, 70 years, hybrid. Okay. Then you want to pass that back to this lady over here?
What were the corn products that the Asian GMO?
Hold it a little ways away. It's kind of echoing. I couldn't understand.
No, all the corn products have the problem?
Not all corns, just the genetically modified ones. Yeah, which are the majority that's being grown today. 89% of the corn crop is genetically modified. As we saw on the video, the farmers are waking up because it's affecting their animals by eating it. It's affecting the animals, and you eat animal foods, you're getting it secondhand from the animals in which you eat. So we need to have good quality food. If you're going to eat meat, unfortunately, I think you have to find organic meat in order to be safe. Because you don't know what they've been fed in the grocery store. And so that's a problem in which we're having today. Okay, there's another hand. Yes, sir.
When you go to the grocery store and you see they sell corn, how do you know by looking at it which is modified?
You have to go by the code. Yeah, and the code may not be on every ear of corn, which it probably is not.
I've noticed that it's not always there.
You have to ask the cashier, because he or she will know what the code is, because they have to put it in the cash register, or ask the produce man or woman if they're present. And oftentimes you'll find a produce person. Okay, is there anyone else? Okay. Oh, we'll clear back in the corner.
She wanted to know if the code is registered on the product, or how is that?
Where's the number? Yes. It's usually a sticker. It's on the produce itself. And corn, I don't think they put it on there. And probably on the majority of things they do. But there are pieces, places, or products, not products, but produce, it came out right yet in my mouth, that you might need to ask about. What is the code? The produce person may not even know what is organically engineered and what is not. So you have to ask. That's one thing we need to do is ask questions.
So you're saying that it's more healthier to eat organic, right? Because it's a lot expensive also.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're a little more expensive, that's for sure. But a lot of areas today have organic co-ops. Even in the desert where we are, we have an organic co-op. And where you can buy from the local farmers with the produce that they have available. It may not be exactly what you want at that moment, but at least it's organically grown. And you find that. I'm sure in this area you'll find organic co-ops that you can buy produce from. And it's usually less expensive than buying it in a grocery store. Mm-hmm. Right here in the front, in the back. Wait till you... right back here. Oh, just a second.
Okay. For the code, the 5-digit is hybrid? The 9 and 8?
No, a 4-digit number is a hybrid. It can start with any number. It can start with an 8 and it's still hybrid.
Oh, okay, so 4-digit would be hybrid.
Now, 5-digit number with an 8 was always GMO.
5 is GMO.
Then a 5-digit number starting with with a 9 is always a organic. It's organic, organically grown.
5-digit with the 9, it's organic.
Uh-huh.
4-digit's organic.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else in here? Okay, over here in the corner.
You were talking about the omega-6. If someone has high omega-6, can you compensate by giving them lots of flaxseed, or does that not work at all?
I'm sorry, again, it's a little echo. Somebody want to... Go ahead and repeat it again. Just hold this back a little bit.
Yeah,
That's better.
When you were talking about the omega-6 making someone violent, would it be a good idea if a person doesn't want to stop eating meats to just give them flaxseed to balance that out, or does that not balance that out at all?
Got it this time. Thank you. You're talking about the oil versus the seed? The flaxseed?
Fats, omega-6s.
Okay.
If a person has a lot of omega-6, could you just give them flaxseed oil so that they're not as violent?
Yes, flaxseed oil will make a big difference. It's amazing what it'll do. In fact, what I have found, and I mentioned this morning, I think, is that flaxseed oil alone sometimes can reverse type 2 diabetes. But a lot of people will ask me, can I use ground flaxseed? Absolutely. It's great for the colon. It's great for your whole system. It does have some omega-3 and omega-6 in it. But you really need more concentration of the oil. So you need the oil on top of it. You need both. And it definitely makes a big difference in one's life. It's great for so many areas. I know this is not GMO, and so far they haven't modified flaxseed. I hope they don't. But you never know. But what it will do, flaxseed oil particularly, is there is cancer treatment programs wrapped around it. It helps the cardiovascular system. It will actually lower blood pressure, lower triglycerides, and also cholesterol levels. It helps the HDL cholesterol, which is your good cholesterol, high-density lipoproteins. What that means, it'll raise that because we need to have that raised and lowered. And so it's great for nervous problems. It helps relax people. They sleep better. And as I mentioned already, it'll work with diabetes and blood sugar problems. This lady right here. There's one back there too.
Regarding the flaxseed, do you recommend a certain dose, daily dose?
Yes, I do. The flaxseed, what I recommend, it depends on the weight of the person. If a person weighs 150 pounds or less, they can get by with maybe 2 tablespoons a day. It doesn't put weight on. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to put this oil in my body and I'm going to gain weight. If you weigh 150 pounds or more, then approximately 3 tablespoons. When I take it, I just don't measure, I just estimate and take it down. The way I take it down, because a lot of people say, "Ooh, yucky, oil." So what I do is I put a little bit of juice in it, just a small amount, not a lot, but it'll take the bitterness away from it.
What kind of juice?
I use grape juice, but you can use other juices as well. I just happen to like grape juice, so that's why I do that. All right, I think there's a lady behind you has her hand up.
The flaxseed will be better on liquid or powder?
It's a liquid. The oil is. It would be an oily substance. The flax seeds themselves, you can make a powder out of it by putting it in a coffee grinder and grinding it up. That's how I would use the seeds. The seeds won't break down if you swallow them whole. They have to be ground, because I don't think your teeth, at least mine, aren't to where I could chew them up enough to be able to get them to really function as they should inside the body. So they have to be ground. What we use at home, when we do it, it works so well we quit doing it. But anyway, we use flaxseed, sesame seed that are hulled, and pumpkin seeds. We put about a third of each one in a coffee grinder, grind it up, and we eat it. And you don't want to have it laying around. It oxidizes almost immediately, so you've got to eat it right away and don't leave any extra. If you do, put it in the freezer. It's good for 1 day. That's about it. And it oxidizes, even in the freezer. So you don't want to make any more than you're going to use of the seeds that you grind up. Okay, any other comments on anything right now? Yes, sir.
Could you please go over the difference between fish oil? I've been taking fish oil for over 3 years, and I had a good effect in using it.
Okay. What kind of oil again?
Fish oil for the omega.
Oh, okay. For your omega-3, omega-6. Yes, krill oil, if you're going to use fish, krill oil is the best one. And krill oil has also DHA in it. Now, I'm vegetarian, so I don't use it, but I'm not against people using it. The only actual warning I would give is the fact that we're living in a time where the ocean is getting pretty polluted. And we end up with mercury, and we're ending up now with radiation because of Fukushima. Fukushima is still putting tons of radiation into the environment. However, krill oil comes from the North Atlantic. So far, I think it's pretty good up there. So that's what I would use. And you want to get a fish oil that has been distilled through the filtering system as a distillation. It costs a little more, but at least they're getting the toxins out of it before you take it. And DHA is important. Now, your vegetable oils do not have DHA. They have other things that help in various conditions we might have, but DHA is great for memory and great for the brain. So if you have memory problems, that's something to consider. And you can buy DHA in supplemental form from vegetarian sources as well, but you have to get it separate from the oil. Okay, anyone else? And right down here, Shiva. Oh, there's somebody clear in the back there.
What vegetables contain or what products contain DHA?
I'm sorry. Come a little forward. So the light in the window was blinding me, and I couldn't hear you because of that. Good excuse, right?
What products contain DHA?
DHA. What products? What product?
Oh, you mean what brand?
What kind of food will contain DHA?
Oh, only fish oil.
Only fish. And that's a Creole fish oil?
Yeah, well, no, also vegetation from the ocean. Okay. Vegetation from the ocean would have it. Nori, kelp, things like that would have DHA in it. So, but it isn't very much, and it doesn't take a lot of it.
Krill oil?
Krill oil. They're little tiny fish that they actually extract out of the North Atlantic. Okay, anybody else? And I'm sorry I have trouble hearing people today. Yes, ma'am.
Some flaxseed oils have what's called lignans. And is that the better one to buy?
The what now?
The flaxseed that has lignans.
Oh, high lignin. Yeah, lignin definitely. Yeah, good question. Thank you for that. I should have covered it. And when you buy flaxseed oil, you can get it without lignin and with lignin. You want it with lignin. Lignin is part of the flaxseed. It's a fiber that's really healthy for your colon. Lig. So somebody a good speller? Okay. We got a lot of good spellers in here. Oh, yes. So anyway, lignin is very important. And what it does, it feeds the friendly bacteria and helps your friendly bacteria to grow. So I definitely would recommend that.
I use a lot of olive oil, so I was wondering, like, olive oil is GMO'd, and the Welch's, the grape juice, you said you like grape juice. Is that also, like, because I drink a lot of Welch's grape juice, is that good, or is it GMO'd as well? Like,
well, let's talk about the olive oil first.
Yeah.
The olive oil is a good oil. Okay. It does have a little bit of omega-3. It does have omega-6 in it. It doesn't have enough unless you took a whole lot of it. But there's some good oils that we should take. Our bodies need oils, and we need that to maintain our mental health, because our brain is made up of 60% fat. You've heard of people call them a fathead. Well, it's really true. But the fact is that we need the oils that are decent in order to make sure that's what we have up here. They've done autopsies, and they have found that people have brains full of oxidation.
wow.
Because they're taking in rancid oils rather than the good oils in which we need. In my household, we only have 3 oils we use: flaxseed oil, olive oil, and then coconut oil. Coconut. Yes. Do you have a microphone over there?
You do now.
I've been taking the arginine and feeling better, but I was wondering if there's anything that you would like to make a comment that's other things that are good in arginine. Yes.
Arginine is a product name, but the arginine actually helps with the heart. It works on a lot of areas of the heart to be able to strengthen the heart muscles. It's one thing it does. Arrhythmia, it helps with that. It helps with the irregular heartbeat, with tachycardia, and a whole variety of other problems with the heart. It'll actually help to clean arteries out and to bring blood pressure down. Yeah, but anyway, if you wanted more help on it, flaxseed oil. Yeah, flaxseed oil.
Can flaxseed oil be used for cooking?
No, it cannot be heated. Neither can olive oil. But what you can heat would be the coconut oil. Coconut oil doesn't cause oxidative stress or oxidation to take place. And oxidation, the way it comes about, is that the heat creates free radicals. Free radicals are atoms, you probably all know that have a damaged electron or missing electron. And when it goes into the human body, it'll cause a chemical reaction. It draws other atoms together that are damaged, and a chemical reaction takes place and cells die as a result of it. Or it takes an electron out of a cell and the cell will die. And so when I look at blood, which I'll look at some of your blood tomorrow, I'm going to see oxidative stress because almost everyone has some. But what we need is to not fry. If you have to fry something, make it coconut oil. It doesn't break down. And let me just finish this thought. Oxidative stress, it's kind of a vicious circle. You have free radicals killing cells, and the results are called oxidation, which is like rusting. It's just like the body starts to rust. And then it makes kind of a cycle, and the oxidation causes more free radicals. So you got a cycle going like this in most human bodies. And that creates inflammation. And so inflammation we don't want. Because they have found now, this is new research, according to Dr. Russell Blaylock, who's a neurosurgeon. He says that the new research that they have found with cancer is that most people that get cancer have had inflammation in their body for years. It's that circulation going round and round and round, and that's what causes the cancer. That's what they're saying now. So we got to break the cycle. How do we break the cycle? Well, one way is through antioxidants. And antioxidants, and what I always recommend is the same thing to everybody, and that is eat berries. Berries do not have a lot of sugar. They have little sugar. Keep in mind, cancer feeds on sugar. We can't feed the body sugar and expect to prevent cancer because that's what it likes to eat. And so we eat berries, and the berries are antioxidant, and that helps to break this cycle that we're going through. Okay, I hope I answered it. Okay.
Yes. What about flax milk?
Okay.
Is that
this lady here has a couple ladies here. Oh, you got the microphone. Go ahead.
What about flax milk? Does that come from flax seeds?
Flaxseed?
Yes. Flax milk. Milk, just like almond milk.
Almond milk? Yeah.
No, the flax milk.
Oh, flax milk. I've never tried that. I don't know. I would think it would be good, just because it came from flax. But almond milk is definitely a good one, as long as it's not full of sugar. Yeah, it doesn't taste real good without the sugar, but nevertheless, you need to be careful with it. So another one that's out there, of course, is rice milk. And rice milk doesn't have any food value, but I don't think it does any harm at the same time. Yeah.
Is peanut oil bad for you, Dr. Casey? Dr. Casey? Dr. Casey?
Oh, over here. I got you.
Is peanut oil bad for you? Peanut oil.
Well, peanut oil, that's not a good one.
It's not a good one.
You want to stay away from peanut oil. A couple of the good ones would be grapeseed oil from grapes. And then there's a young lady in the back there that's got her hand up. And walnut oil is not too bad. It's full of omega-3, but the problem is it's unstable. It might go rancid before you actually use it. But I would stick with the oils.
Is almond milk good for you?
I'm sorry, honey?
Is almond milk good for you?
Yes, it is. That's good. It definitely is. And I would use it. Another one's avocado oil. There is I think it's the country of Guatemala, if I'm not mistaken. They grow a lot of coffee, and the coffee plants have to be shaded. And so they use, in this one particular village, they have avocado trees that are shading the coffee. And the people there look 15 to 20 years younger than their actual chronological age. So scientists went in to find out why, and it's because they eat avocados every single day. Because, it's in a tropical area, so the trees produce all year round. And it's because of the avocado. That's a good anti-aging. And it's a tasty one at the same time. I love avocado. Okay, anybody else? This lady's had her hand. Oh, you got a microphone.
I've heard that coconut oil is really good for this and for that and so many things. But is there an amount of coconut oil that's good and not too much? Because you can have too much of a good thing.
Well, yeah. Anything we don't want to overdo. But coconut oil is definitely one you can cook with. What we recommend to people is that they cook with water and then maybe put a little bit of olive oil on afterwards. There's certain oils you definitely want to stay away from. One would be corn oil. Corn oil, they say it's good for your heart, but they don't tell you it causes cancer. You want to stay away from canola oil because it's genetically modified plants.
I see.
And so you have to be careful with the oils in which you use. Yes, sir.
What about sesame seed oil?
Sesame seed is okay. Yeah. But I wouldn't use a lot of it. Sparingly, and oils of that nature. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What about hemp?
Hemp? Yeah, hemp is really high in omega-3, and it's a good oil. You don't want to smoke it. Yeah. Chia is great. Chia seeds are great. They give you a lot of protein and energy. And like I talked about this morning, we've got to be careful of protein, but that is a natural protein, and I go with that one. Pardon me? Oh, that's who's talking to me. Let's look at yeah. Or you can grind them too and eat it as a powder and put it on your foods. There are different ways you can do it. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention to people something I just noticed the other day, that almost all peanut butter now has rapeseed. It's made with rapeseed. And
oh, is it?
That is a very dangerous thing. Peanut butters. And you have to watch in the stores what you're buying. If it has rapeseed, don't buy it. Or canola, because canola itself has rapeseed in it now.
Right.
It's imported from China or somewhere else, like that. And a few years ago, there was a huge amount of people died from that. And the Chinese had been importing it into different countries like India. And so I just happened to notice, so watch out for your peanut butter.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
I just wanted...
It says so on the jar.
The canola oil is actually genetically modified rapeseed.
Uh-huh.
Officially.
It really
they changed the name of it some years ago because they couldn't sell it as rapeseed.
Yeah, I'd be very careful with it. And I thank you about the peanut butter because a lot of people eat peanut butter, that's for sure. All right. Anybody else? And we'll probably bring the meeting to a close pretty soon here.
And you said the olive oil is non-GMO?
To this point, yes. Yes, non-GMO.
Okay, and the grape, you didn't tell me the answer for the grape? Grape is okay?
The grape, yeah, that's still good at this point. Yeah, they haven't modified those yet.
Okay, good.
And I hope they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and bring it to a close unless there's one last minute comment of anybody. Well, thank you. Those of you that will be here tomorrow, I'll be available from 9 to 3, and we'll look forward to talking with you. And if you have questions, I'll be around after the meeting too, and I'll be glad to talk with you.
Maybe we could just get a show of hands. Are any of you going to be here tomorrow morning?
Better come early.
Keep your hands up so I can count. Keep your hands up, please, so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sure. All right. Thank you. Thank you. That just gives an idea. I got about 10 or 11 there.
Yeah.
How many of you are already on the list? How many came last time, didn't get to see him, and you're on the waiting list?
Just 1 or 2.
You're on the waiting list? Okay, good. All right, so we got about 11 right here. Probably more will show up.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. And let's bow our heads and have prayer, okay? Father in heaven, we thank you that for the message of health that you have given to us in your word. And we know that our bodies are your temple, Father. We want to live to glorify you. We pray, Father, that the things that we have learned here will bless us, that we might indeed glorify you in our health. Amen. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. God bless you all.
God bless you. Thank you.
Okay. Mike.